40 minutes after her company laid me off, Rosalind Hale called my personal cell, the CEO herself, from her private number and said, "Wes, do you still have your father's tools?" I was standing in the parking lot of Hale Furniture Works, holding a banker's box with 11 years of my working life in it, and I looked at the phone like it had barked. "Mrs. Hale? Rosalind, your father called me Rosalind for 31 years. You can manage it for one phone call." Behind her voice, birds, a garden, not the 14th floor. The tools, Wes, Michael's chisels, the good saws. "Do you have them?" "They're in my garage." "I haven't." I stopped. "I haven't opened the box in 18 months was more than I owed anybody in that parking lot." "I have them." "Good. My fence is down. The garden fence, the one your father and my Gerald built. I need it repaired, and I need it repaired by you, and I need you to come now, today, before you sign one single page of whatever they put in that box of yours." A pause with weight on it. "You were on this morning's list, weren't you?" "The restructuring." "Along with 30 other people, ma'am." 29 other people," said Rosalind Hale. "And you. Come to the house, Wes. Bring the tools. And bring that box. Here's what you need while I drive, and I'll keep it moving." Hale Furniture Works, 41 years old, 1,200 employees. The last mid-size furniture maker in this state that still ran a real benchroom. Founded by Gerald and Rosalind Hale and built with the hands of, among others, my father, Big Mike Calder, shop foreman, employee number 3. The man who could read a board like scripture. Gerald died 9 years ago. My dad died 18 months ago, and Rosalind Hale stood up at his funeral without notes and made 200 grown machinists cry. Me. I'm the foreman's son who traded sawdust for spreadsheets, 11 years in procurement, a badge, a cubicle, and, as of 9:15 this morning, a box. The Hale place sits on 6 acres at the end of Kiln Road, and you see the fence before you see the house, because there is no other fence like it anywhere. Gerald and my father built it across one long ago summer entirely from factory offcuts. Every board a different species, walnut against ash, against cherry, against white oak. Each one branded at the base with a little iron stamp, the wood, the year, the man. People call it the sampler fence. My dad called it the only catalog that never lied. A storm limb had taken down 2 full panels on the garden side, and rot had been quietly working the rail beneath them for longer than that. Rosalind was standing at the gap when I pulled in, 72 years old, silver hair pinned like architecture, gardening gloves, and an expression I'd only ever seen across a negotiating table. She didn't say hello. She said, "Whose chisels?" I lifted the old wooden tote out of the truck bed. "My father's." "Good," said Rosalind Hale. "They remember this fence." Then she walked me up the porch steps, poured coffee from a thermos like we were on a job site, and took the whole morning apart in 4 sentences. "Margot Fain is selling my company to a private equity firm called Corliss Capital, and the board votes Friday at 10. To get her price, she has spent 2 years quietly gutting the product and dressing up the numbers. To get her vote, she has spent 6 months building a file that says I'm erratic, obstructive, and past it. And this morning, to be safe, she laid off the one procurement analyst who had started pulling on the loose thread, which is how I knew, finally, that every bit of it was real. They only hide bodies where nobody's digging, Wes. Today, they laid off my digger. The Keystone Milling invoices. 3 weeks ago, I'd flagged a set of duplicates to my manager, same vendor, same amounts, 2 payment runs, and gotten back a calendar decline and a silence you could park a truck in. The printouts were in my banker's box, in a folder I probably wasn't supposed to still have, underneath a coffee mug, and 11 years. "They're taking my company Friday," Rosalind said, watching me do the math. "You're going to help me stop them. It started this morning, when they took you." She set down her cup, and something in her face changed registers. CEO to something older and more expensive. But first, the fence. It needs 3 boards matched, milled, and matched right, and there is exactly one person alive who can do it. She looked out at the gap in the sampler fence for a long moment. And Wes, there's someone I want you to meet. The briefing took 20 minutes on the porch, and it was worse than she'd made it sound. Because Rosalind Hale narrates disaster the way she reads a balance sheet. No adjectives. All low. The file against her was real. And it was clever. A board meeting she'd missed, moved 40 minutes by a calendar edit she never made. A supplier agreement bearing her e-signature that she had never seen, executed from her own executive account at 11 p.m. On a night her badge showed her gone by 6. 2 concerned tone memos about founder transition risk, leaked to exactly the right directors. Margot Fain had been her CFO for 9 years, and her protege for 15 before that. Hired at 26. Taught at Rosalind's elbow, promoted over older men because she was, and I quote, the best pure mind I ever trained. The best pure mind now ran finance, IT, and security, which meant she ran the calendars, the signatures, the badges, and the version of reality the board got to see. Friday, she needs 2 things, Rosalind said. The votes to approve Corliss's letter of intent and the votes to move me aside for obstructing the transaction. She has 41% behaving itself. I have 34. The employee trust holds 12 and votes with management, unless directed otherwise in writing, which no one has ever bothered to organize. She paused. Exactly 1 beat, and 8% belongs to my daughter, who has not spoken to me in 6 years. Which brought us to the fence. She handed me a cedar-wrapped bundle, the shattered boards from the downed panels, a length of quarter-sawn sycamore, a piece of butternut you cannot buy anymore, and 1 board of curly cherry gone silver with 40 years of weather. At the base of the cherry, stamped into the grain, Cherry 86 MC, my father's stamp. His initials, set with his own iron, the summer before I was born. Juno runs a restoration shop in Millbrook, Rosalind said. She is the finest woodmatcher I have ever seen, including every man who ever worked my floor, and she will not answer my calls, my letters, or my knock. She made that very clear. The gloves came off, finger by finger, which is what Rosalind Hale does instead of showing feelings. But she will open the door for that board, Wes. She'd open the door for that board if it arrived by itself. Her grandfather's fence, her grandfather's stamps, the smallest hesitation, your father's stamp. Take it to her. Ask her to match 3 species. That's all. Don't argue my case. I have no case. Just let her hold the board, and the rest of it? The vote, 1 door at a time, said my CEO, and picked up a hammer like she intended to personally supervise, which she did. Juno Hale's shop sat in a converted feed store in Millbrook, with no sign except a mortise and tenon joint the size of a mailbox mounted over the door, and when she opened that door and saw a stranger holding a cedar-wrapped bundle, she got 1 syllable out. We're not. And then I folded the wrapping back, and she stopped. She was maybe 36, sawdust in dark hair, forearms like a person who works for a living, and her mother's exact talent for saying nothing at maximum volume. She looked at the silvered cherry and the stamp, and her jaw set. You can come in, she said. The boards can come in. Her name stays outside. Her shop was a cathedral of other people's histories, a Federal-era secretary in clamps, a church pew half-stripped, a child's rocker waiting on 1 new runner. She laid the fence boards on her bench like Patience, and she ran her thumb over my father's stamp once, and asked whose son I was, and when I told her, some second lock opened about 1 inch. She'd known Big Mike. Everybody who mattered had known Big Mike. So I made the ask exactly as instructed. 3 species, matched and milled, that's all. And Juno Hale said yes to the wood in about 4 minutes, and then figured out the rest of it in about 4 seconds, because she is her mother's daughter, whether either of them can stand to hear it. She sent you, she said. Storm damage, sure, but she sent you with that stamp showing. The week of, she stopped, and I watched her decide how much I knew, and see that I knew all of it. Her laugh had no fun in it. The vote. Friday, my 8%. She pulled off her shop apron like it had offended her. Let me save you the speech. 6 years ago, I was in that building, learning the operations side, being the daughter, and I found padding in the vendor accounts. Small, tidy, professional padding. I brought it to my mother with the printouts in my hand, and Margot explained it away in 11 minutes with a slide deck, and my mother looked at me and said, "Margot's checked it thoroughly." She believed the spreadsheet, Wes. I was holding paper and she believed the spreadsheet. She shook her head, one hard shake. So no, whatever's burning over there now, it's the fire I smelled 6 years ago, and she can stand in it. Let it burn. The shop went quiet, except for a clock somewhere behind the pew. The boards, though, Juno said, already reaching for a rule, already unable to help it, her hand flat on the curly cherry like it was warm. The boards I'll do. Butternut'll take me some calls. Nobody's milled it in years. She looked up with a warning in it. I'm matching wood. I'm not saving her. Understood, I said, and left before she could hear how much I intended that to change. I opened my father's toolbox that evening on Rosalind Hale's back lawn, for the first time since the funeral, and the hinges hadn't even stiffened. 18 months. He kept his oil can the way other men keep their prayers. We worked the fence till the light went, pulled the ruined panels, cut out the rot, set new rail stock to dry fit, and Rosalind Hale worked beside me in gardening gloves, holding boards, reading levels, asking short, correct questions, and I understood something about my father's 31 years at that company that no org chart had ever explained. The war arrived by mail and by phone. In between, first, my severance packet, couriered to my house and forwarded by a neighbor's photo. Signed by Wednesday, 5 p.m., and the money and the positive reference were mine. Contingent. Page 4, on confidentiality, non-disparagement, and a representation that I retain no company documents of any kind. The folder in my banker's box made that last sentence a loaded gun. Don't sign, and I was an unemployed procurement guy with a mortgage. Sign, and I was a muzzle with a mortgage. Read page 4 again, Rosalind said, and held out her hand for the Keystone folder, and put on the glasses she pretends are for distance. Duplicate invoices, 11 months of them. Keystone Milling LLC, lumber amounts that never matched any bill of lading I could find, paid promptly twice. The address, when we ran it on my phone at her kitchen table, resolved to a mailbox store between a nail salon and a taco place. The state filing listed a single organizer, T. Brister, a name that meant nothing to either of us until Rosalind went very still and said Tessa Brister was Margot's roommate at Wharton. She toasted at Margot's wedding. She took her glasses off. Sawdust in the books. Gerald used to say that. When the numbers smell like the floor, but the floor's never seen them. Sawdust in the books. While she said it, her phone buzzed on the counter, the all-staff email, CC'd to a retiree list she was still on. As Hale Furniture Works enters an exciting new chapter, the board's transition committee will be supporting founders' succession planning. Margot's signature block at the bottom, serene as a settled invoice. She was announcing the ending in advance, company-wide, in the passive voice. That's what real power looks like. She didn't even need Friday yet. She was just tidying. Juno came back 2 days early, which I would learn is how Juno apologizes. She arrives before she's expected, and starts working before anyone can make it a moment. She came up the drive Tuesday evening with milled boards racked in the truck bed like organ pipes, and something else under a moving blanket, and her face already braced for her mother, and her mother, to her credit, stayed on the porch and let her daughter come to the fence instead of the door. The something else was a nightstand. Current production. Hale Heritage Collection, the line named for Gerald, the line with the little brass plaque, the line that costs what real furniture costs. A customer brought me this 3 weeks ago for a repair, Juno said, setting it on the tailgate. Loose top. I opened it up. And then I refinished her whole dining set for free because I was too ashamed to charge her. She had a Japanese pull saw in her hand. You should both see what I saw. She cut the carcass open right there on the tailgate, in the gold hour, in front of the fence her grandfather built, and the guts of the thing fell out into the light, staple shot-butt joints. Foam block, particle board core under a photograph thin veneer, and glue squeeze out where the dovetails used to live. Then, she set it beside the drawer she'd pulled from a 40-year-old Hale dresser in her truck, her grandfather's era. Dovetails marching like teeth, solid maple gone honey with age, and the two of them sat there together on the tailgate. The promise and the costume. And nobody said anything for a moment, because there wasn't anything polite available. That's not furniture, Juno said finally. That's a costume. She looked at her mother for the first time in 6 years and pointed one sawdusted finger at the brass Heritage by Hale plaque. Nobody staples my grandfather's name. That's the moment she was in. Not a treaty, a deputizing. She spread my Keystone printouts on the tailgate next to the staples and started connecting them out loud like a woman bidding a job. Fake lumber invoices to cover material that was never bought because the product no longer used it. The spread pocketed through a mailbox on Route 9. The brand's price charged for the brand's corpse. She's not just cooking the numbers for Corliss, Juno said. She's charging the customers for wood that isn't there. That's not accounting fraud. That's retail fraud. 1,200 units a quarter. Say that part again, Rosalind said slowly. Not about the fraud. She was looking at her own kitchen window. Last week. Margot's memo to the transition committee. She wrote that I would come to the board with sawdust in the book's theatrics. She turned to us, and I watched a 72-year-old CEO get visibly cold in July. Gerald's phrase. My phrase. I have said it exactly once this year, Sunday, at that table, to Wes. Her eyes went down the counter to the sleek little company-gifted smart display from all of us at Hale, Merry Christmas, that it had so kindly set up personally. My house, said Rosalind Hale, has been taking minutes. We didn't rip it off the wall. That was Juno's call, and it was the coldest best call of the week. You don't burn a tap, you feed it. So Wednesday began with theater. We scripted it at the fence at dawn, phones in a coffee can by the gate, voices low over the new rail, and then we went inside and performed it in the kitchen, near the helpful little screen, in the tone of people who believe they're winning. The original Keystone files, the paper ones, were sitting in the Building C archive, and we would pull them Thursday afternoon for the board. There are no original Keystone files in Building C. There is no paper. We invented a body and told the walls where we'd buried it. By 7:40 a.m., Building C was sealed. Emergency pest remediation. Per the sign. Per the 2 contractors' vans. Per. Juno photographed it from the road with a long lens her trade uses for grain, and her family now used for war. The box truck from a certified shredding service idling at the dock. Margot had heard a rumor at 7 and burned a building by 8. We had our proof about the kitchen. She had, though she wouldn't know it for 2 more days, a listening device that now worked for us. The rest of Wednesday she spent erasing Rosalind Hale in the passive voice. At 9, Rosalind's badge died at the lobby turnstile. I watched it happen. I'd driven her there myself. At 9:20, her email began auto-replying that she was taking a period of well-deserved rest at the recommendation of her physician and the request of the board. A physician she hadn't seen, and a request never voted. By noon, the trade press had it, sympathetically phrased, sourced to people close to the company. She stood in her own lobby for one long moment, under the founder's photo wall. Gerald squinting into 1984, my father beside him with a jointer plane, while a security kid who used to hold the elevator for her explained, miserably, that he had his instructions. She didn't raise her voice. She looked at the photographs, and then at the kid, and said, "Tell your mother I said hello, Marcus," and walked out of her company on her own power, and got in my truck, and said nothing for 11 miles, and then said, "I taught Margot everything about this business." A mile. Gerald taught me the difference between the business and the work. Another mile, looking straight down the road. I never passed that part on. That's the audit finding, Wes. That's mine. My own 5 o'clock came and went that afternoon. Page 4. The money. The muzzle. I let it die on the kitchen counter unsigned. And it's not that I wasn't afraid. It's that I'd spent 3 days holding my father's chisels, and I knew what he'd charge me for signing. At 5:09, right on schedule, the follow-up arrived from Hale's outside counsel. My severance offer was withdrawn. A litigation hold now applied to me personally, and the company reserved all remedies, civil and criminal, regarding misappropriated proprietary documents. They'd named my folder a theft and me a suspect, in writing, in 9 hours. And at dusk, without a phone call, without a knock, Juno Hale's truck came up Kiln Road, and she got out, and looked at her mother sitting hollowed out on the porch steps, and did not hug her. Because they are neither of them huggers, she walked to the fence gap, put on her apron, held out a hand to me, and said, "Hand me the plane. Don't make it a moment." And the 3 of us worked the sampler fence until full dark. The locked-out founder, the fired analyst, the estranged daughter, and from the outside it would have looked like nothing at all. 3 people fixing a fence, which is to say, the only meeting Margot Fain couldn't cancel. In the only room she couldn't bug. Thursday morning, Saul Perlman came to the fence. Gerald's lawyer for 30 years, retired twice, unretired twice, 81 years old with a mind like a mortise gauge. He stood at the coffee can gate, took in the setup, and said, "Gerald always said the garden was the only conference room worth booking." He laid the math on the new fence rail like a cut list. Margot's block, 41%, disciplined. Rosalind, 34, locked out of the building but not the ledger. Juno, 8, alive in a drawer for 6 years. And the employee trust, Saul said, tapping the rail, 12%, voted by the trustee bank, which defaults with management, unless participants file written direction. It's in the plan document. Nobody's organized it in 41 years, because nobody ever had to. He looked up over his glasses. Direction letters. Signed, in the trustee's hands before 10 tomorrow. That's your 12%. And 34 plus 8 plus 12 is the ball game. If you can reach the employees by tonight, without setting foot on property you're barred from, using channels your opponent doesn't own. Margot owned the email. Margot owned the badges, the bulletin boards, the all-staff list, the parking lot cameras. She did not own Kiln Road. The word went out the way it used to before any of Margot's systems existed, the way my father's shift change news had always traveled. Otis Grange, floor foreman 26 years, got 1 call from Rosalind's ancient flip phone, and Otis called 2 men. And those 2 called 4. And that evening, in the long gold light, the sampler fence got a congregation. They came up Kiln Road 2 and 3 at a time, parking down by the culvert like it was a wake, benchmen and finishers, a QC lead, 2 shipping women, the upholstery matriarch everyone calls Raina, retirees who smelled the news on the wind. They came through the garden gate, and every single one of them stopped at the fence first, the way you'd check on an elder, and found their own stamps or their father's in the boards. And they did not come empty-handed. That was the night I learned what Margot Fain, in 9 years of dashboards, had never once audited. The floor keeps its own books. Otis set a battered red binder on the fence rail, the red tag log. Every unit the line had flagged and been overruled on for 19 months. Dates, defects, initials. The override column filling up with the same 2 sets of initials from upstairs. They told us to stop keeping it and shred the old ones, Otis said. So it lives in my truck now. He put his hand flat on the binder. Big Mike trained me in '88, and the first thing he taught me was you never throw away a cut list. You keep the record of what you were told to cut, so when the thing fails, everybody knows whose pencil it was. Raina brought fabric invoices that didn't match the goods on her tables. The QC lead brought photographs, time-stamped, of heritage units staged for the showroom next to their production twins. And one by one, at the fence rail, by lantern light, on the hood of Otis's truck, they signed Saul's direction letters. I hereby direct the trustee to vote my interest against the proposed transaction and against any change in the office of chief executive. 12% of the company assembling itself out of pickup trucks and loyalty. 2 signatures at a time. Juno stood at the edge of it with a lantern, watching her mother work the crowd. Except it wasn't working a crowd. That's the thing she watched. It was Rosalind Hale greeting every person by name, and their kids by name, and their kids' ball teams by name, asking Raina about her hip and Otis about his granddaughter's welding cert, standing at that fence for 3 hours in July, hearing about defects with her hands folded like she was in church. Around 9, Juno came and stood next to me with her arms crossed, doing the thing where she says something enormous like she's reading a materials list. You knew their names, she said, when her mother finally came to the lantern. Not an accusation, a discovery. It was never the spreadsheets I loved, Rosalind said. I just believed the wrong ledger, once, when it argued with my daughter. It was the worst trade I ever made, and I've been paying the VIG for 6 years. Juno looked at the fence, and the letters stacking up on the truck hood, and her grandfather's stamps going silver in the lantern light. Grandpa's stamp is on the gate, Mom, she said, which in the Hale family dialect is a whole reconciliation, and both of them let it be one. Late that night, we fed the kitchen its last meal. Juno directed it like theater, because by then we'd all accepted she was the coldest strategist on the property. We came inside tired and beaten sounding, and near the helpful little screen, Rosalind delivered the performance of a proud woman out of moves. No documents. Building C had seen to that. No proof, nothing left, but a plea. She would come Friday and beg the board to delay the vote pending an independent audit. It's all I have, she said to her own kitchen. Weary, perfect, a delay. Maybe they'll grant an old woman a delay. Somewhere across town, we had to believe, Margot Fain began sharpening Friday's presentation against a delay motion that was never coming, briefing counsel on how to swat an audit plea, building slides against a ghost. The real Friday was already loaded in Juno's truck, the nightstand and the 40-year-old drawer, foam-wrapped like relics, 3 bound copies of what we'd taken to calling the cut list, Keystone invoices to Brister filings, red tag log to override initials, staged photos. The spoofed signature analysis Souls forensic guy had turned in 24 hours. My original flagged printouts with my original dated email on top, the one I'd sent 3 weeks before my role was eliminated, and the letters. 91 signed direction letters, couriered to the trustee bank at 8:02 that evening with Souls' cover memo. Receipt requested. The last piece was a door, board access. For people the CFO had barred from the building, and that was Doris Ito, director for 19 years, Gerald's old friend. The one vote in Margot's column that had been voting its unease. Saul called her from the garden at 10 p.m., flip phone, no preamble, and put Rosalind on, and Rosalind said one sentence, "Doris, before you vote tomorrow, I'd like you to see what the company is actually selling. I'll need 11 minutes and a guest pass for 3. Silence. Then Ito's voice, dry as kiln stock. You'll have 12. Bring the daughter. It's time this board met a Hale who still has sawdust on her." Margot's voicemail landed on Rosalind's phone at 11:47 p.m., and we played it at the fence by lantern light. And I'll give you the whole thing, because you should hear how Aprache says goodbye, Roz. Take the leave. Please, you built something wonderful, and the market's moved, and none of this has to be ugly. Your legacy stays golden. The employees get Corliss's deep pockets. Everybody wins except your pride. Come Friday and make your little delay speech if you have to. But hear me. Friday can be gentle, or Friday can be thorough. I learned thorough from you. Rosalind listened to it twice, standing at the gap where the new boards waited, her hand resting on her husband's 40-year-old cherry. "Save that," she said. She just told the room she knew about a speech I only ever gave to my kitchen. We set the last matched board that night. Juno's milling, my father's chisels, all 3 of us on the clamps. And while the glue cured, Juno and I ended up alone at the gate with the lanterns burning down, close enough that the next thing was obvious, and she looked at me the way she looks at a joint she likes and isn't ready to admit it. "Ask me after the glue sets," she said. "That's tomorrow." "I know what it is," said Juno Hale, and squeezed the clamp one more quarter turn and went to check on her mother. Friday, 9:58 a.m., 14th floor. Margot Fain stood at the head of the board table she'd been rehearsing toward for 2 years, slides cued, counsel flanked. The Corliss Capital partner, a precise gray man named Leland, seated at her right hand like a closing gift. She had prepared, brilliantly, for a delay motion and an audit plea from a locked-out old woman. At 10:04, Doris Ito said, "Before the transaction vote, I'm exercising my prerogative to yield 12 minutes to a shareholder presentation," and the doors opened, and the wrong war walked in. Rosalind Hale came first in the navy suit she'd worn to ring the opening bell in 1998. I came behind her with the bound copies. And Juno came last, in shop clothes on purpose, carrying a nightstand. "This is," Margot recalibrated in real time. You could watch it. Silk over scramble, Rosalind. "This is a governance violation. You're on medical. I'm a 34% holder attending as Director Ito's guest," Rosalind said pleasantly, taking the foot of the table like it had been saving her seat. "And as of 8:02 last night, the employee trust, 12%, is under written participant direction. 91 letters. The trustee confirmed receipt at 9, and my daughter, Juno, set the nightstand on the mahogany with a thud that made counsel flinch. Votes 8. You may want to rerun your math before you rerun your motion, Margot. But first, Mr. Leland deserves to see the asset." Juno pulled the sawn open heritage nightstand around to face the Corliss partner, and beside it, she set the 40-year-old drawer, dovetails like teeth. And then she addressed a fortune-adjacent board of directors, the way she'd address an apprentice who'd lied about sanding. "This is what the heritage plaque bought in 1985. Her hand on the old drawer. "This is what it buys now." Her hand into the open carcass, and she tilted it, and the staples and foam crumbs scattered out across the boardroom mahogany with a sound like sleet. "Particle board core. Photo veneer. Stapled butts where the joinery's supposed to live, sold at solid hardwood prices under my grandfather's name. Roughly 1,200 units a quarter." She looked up at Leland. "You're buying the staples, Mr. Leland. The dovetails left 2 years ago. That's the heritage you sold." she said to Margot, and stepped back. Then the cut list, tab by tab, while the room got quieter in layers. Keystone Milling's invoices against its mailbox on Route 9, T. Brister's filing against a wedding toast, the red tag log with its override column. My flagged email. Dated 3 weeks before my role dissolved, the forensic memo on an e-signature executed, while its owner's badge was 40 minutes gone. Leland Reed with the terrible speed of a man billing out his own escape, and somewhere around the override initials he capped his pen, and a $200 million letter of intent quietly died on the table between tabs 4 and 5. Margot fought. She was always going to fight. Rosalind trained her. Theater, she said. Cherry-picked exhibits and a family sob story. Where's the delay motion, Roz? Where's the audit plea? Last night you had nothing. The room heard it before she did. You could see the sentence leave her and come back wrong. Last night, Rosalind said gently. I said that to my kitchen. She let it sit. To a screen your IT department gifted me and personally set up. We fed it Building C on Wednesday morning, Margot, and by 8 you'd sealed the building and booked the shredding truck, Juno, the photograph. And we fed it a delay speech last night, and here you stand, armored against emotion that doesn't exist. She folded her hands. You were listening. Thank you for confirming it in the minutes. The silence in that boardroom had texture. The HESVAC breathed. Leland's pen stayed capped. 11 directors looked at the staples on the mahogany and at the CFO and did the only math left. And Rosalind Hale looked down the table at the best pure mind she ever trained, 26 years old once, in a lobby holding a Russum and all that hunger, and delivered the quietest sentence of the whole war. And nobody in that room so much as breathed around it. I taught you everything except why. The votes went fast after that, the way collapses do. Removal motion, dead, unseconded, the Corliss Loai, withdrawn by Corliss itself, Leland already standing, already regretting the commute. Margot Fain, suspended without authority pending an independent audit. The real one, with it and finance access severed by lunch, escorted out past the founder's wall, past Gerald squinting into 1984, past Big Mike and his jointer plane. She stopped at the elevator and gave Rosalind the last shot in her magazine. You were a museum, Roz. I was just selling tickets. Museums, said Rosalind Hale, are where they keep the things that lasted. The doors closed on that, which was the correct amount of Margot Fain for anyone to keep. The after, in the Hale style. No adjectives, all load. The independent audit found everything we'd found, and then kept digging. The auditor's referral went to the state attorney general. The clawback suit went to Margot's door. And Keystone Milling's mailbox went back to holding takeout menus. Tessa Brister is cooperating. The customers came first, though, because Rosalind stood in front of the company the following week, badge working, voice level, and announced the thing the lawyers begged her not to. Every stapled heritage piece, every unit of the costume years, rebuilt by hand or bought back at full price. No receipts required. We fix every piece, she told 1,200 employees, at the cost of the truth. It's cheaper than the alternative. Ask Margot. They reopened Building C to do it. The archive that never held our imaginary files now holds the repair clinics, 11 benches, real joinery, a waiting list. Juno runs them, consulting only, she says, and has said, daily, for months, fooling no one, while the succession paperwork sits on Sol's desk gathering exactly as much dust as Rosalind allows it. Me, I never got my cubicle back, and it's the best thing the company ever did for me, second best, because Rosalind called me into the corner office my father never once sat down in and said, "Procurement had you counting other men's lumber. I want you where your father stood. Bench operations, the floor, the red tag log now a policy with my signature line under Otis's. First morning, Otis handed me Big Mike's old shop apron off a nail where I swear it had been waiting 18 months, and the hinges of me hadn't stiffened either. Quite. And on a Saturday in September, we finished the fence. 3 matched boards, Juno's sycamore, Juno's impossible butternut, and 1 board of curly cherry cut from my father's own saved stock, out of my garage, milled in Millbrook, fitted with his chisels. Finished with Rosalind's varnish, 4 sets of hands in 1 board, if you count the dead. And at that fence, you always count the dead. Juno heated the old stamp iron on a torch and struck it clean at the base, the species, the year. Then she handed the iron to me for the initials and stood close while the smoke curled up and said, "The glue's set." So, I asked her. Right there at the gate, with her mother 20 feet away aggressively pretending to deadhead roses, Juno Hale looked me over the way she looks over stock. 1 long assessing pass. No mercy in it, and no doubt either. "Straight grain," she said. "Few knots. I can work with it." Which in the Hale family dialect is a yes, and I have it in writing now, more or less, burned into a fence. "From the roses without turning around," Rosalind said. "I want the record to reflect that I sent him to Millbrook for a species match. Any romance was an unplanned efficiency. You sent him with Grandpa's stamp, showing, Mom, allegedly," said the chief executive officer. "Here's what I know now, and then I want your side of the fence. Companies don't rot from the numbers. The numbers are just where the smell shows up. Things hold or fail at the joints. Furniture, families, firms, and the joints are cut by hand, by people, by whoever taught your hands the difference between fast and right. So, 2 questions, and I read every comment. If it had been your box in that parking lot, the folder they eliminated you for keeping, would you have signed page 4 by Wednesday and taken the check, or driven it out Kiln Road to the 1 person they were burying next? And tell me this, whose tools taught your hands the thing your job never asks of them anymore? Put their name in the comments. The teacher, the trade, the thing you built together. Then, go open the toolbox. The hinges haven't stiffened yet, and if you stayed with me all the way to the last stamp, subscribe. This channel is for the ones who keep the cut lists.